Whitney, if you could hear me now, I would tell you, you weren't just good enough. You were great. You weren't just pretty. You were as beautiful as a woman could be.
What if I told you that Kevin Costner called Whitney Houston his one true love at her funeral? What secret did he carry for 20 years that he finally revealed in front of millions? And why did the letters he wrote to Whitney during her darkest moments go completely unanswered? Today, we're diving deep into one of Hollywood's most emotional confessions that left fans stunned and questioning everything they thought they knew about these two superstars. According to the provided research, The Bodyguard almost never happened. The script was written in the 1970s by Lawrence Kasdan for Diana Ross and Steve McQueen. Studios rejected it over 60 times, calling it unrealistic and not commercial enough. The script gathered dust until Kevin Costner's career exploded with Dances with Wolves in 1990. When Costner decided to revive The Bodyguard, he had one person in mind, Whitney Houston, but executives were concerned about her inexperience. Costner didn't care. As the research reveals, he called the writer directly and said, "This girl is perfect, and I'm going to prove it." Convincing Whitney was another challenge. Despite being the biggest pop star on the planet, she was terrified of acting. She feared critics would tear her apart before she could prove herself. The research shows she initially wanted nothing to do with the project, but Costner persisted, calling her directly and promising to support and protect her. His sincerity eventually convinced her to try a screen test. But here's something that will shock you. What happened during that screen test nearly ended everything before it began. The screen test became one of the most revealing moments in their relationship. According to the research, Whitney was a nervous wreck. She delayed coming out of her trailer, obsessing over her appearance and finding 1,000 things wrong with herself. Costner watched her struggle, seeing how small she seemed in that moment, like a superstar reduced to self-doubt. Then disaster struck. Whitney had changed her makeup during a break to make herself prettier. Under the hot studio lights, the makeup began melting and streaking her face. The crew had to stop the test just minutes in. Here's the shocking part. Costner later confessed he considered rigging the audition. He thought about telling the studio that anything Whitney did would be brilliant, but he stopped himself, knowing it would be unfair. Instead, he encouraged her, telling her she didn't need to be perfect. Her authenticity was already enough. When The Bodyguard premiered in 1992, audiences witnessed extraordinary chemistry between Costner and Houston. The research reveals that executives had worried about Houston's inexperience and whether audiences would accept an interracial romance. Those fears proved groundless. The film grossed over $400 million worldwide, but the soundtrack made history. Originally, Whitney was set to sing "What Becomes of the Brokenhearted," but when another film used it, they needed alternatives. Costner suggested Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You" and championed the famous a cappella intro. That song became one of the most recognized ballads ever, and the soundtrack sold 45 million copies. But while the world celebrated their success, something heartbreaking was happening behind the scenes that would haunt Costner for decades. As Whitney's struggles with addiction became public in the late 1990s, Costner couldn't just watch. The research reveals he began writing her letters, not lectures, but reminders that she was valued and that someone still saw her worth when she doubted herself. Costner, who disliked writing, pushed himself because he believed Whitney needed to hear from someone she trusted. He hoped his words might cut through the noise of fame and addiction, offering a lifeline back to the vulnerable woman he had once reassured. But those letters never reached her. Costner never got a reply. He had no way of knowing if Whitney read them, ignored them, or saw them at all. That silence tormented him. It must have been devastating for a man who had once told her she was good enough to watch her spiral into self-destruction. When Whitney Houston passed away in February 2012, Kevin Costner delivered a eulogy that stunned everyone. At New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, Costner revealed details no one expected. He recounted her nervousness during the screen test, how she had asked him to leave the room, then returned with makeup that melted under the lights. He described her fragile voice, admitting she only wanted to look her best. The research shows that Costner told the congregation, "You weren't just good enough, you were great." But then came the moment that would change how the world saw their relationship forever. In his eulogy, Costner called Whitney his one true love. According to the research, this revelation reignited decades of speculation about their relationship. For 20 years, both stars had deflected rumors, but at Whitney's funeral, Costner broke his silence. His final words thundered through headlines. "Don't you worry, Whitney, you will be good enough." This statement, choked with sorrow, became a watershed moment. It harked back to their beginning. Whenever she doubted herself, he had made her stand tall. 2 decades later, he was offering her the same comfort one last time. In later interviews, the research reveals, Costner explained his love wasn't about scandal, but truth. He described Whitney's brilliance and fragility, how painful it was to see her doubt herself despite extraordinary gifts. He admitted the letters he wrote were attempts to comfort her, though they went unanswered. The public response was divided. Some saw his honesty as the purest tribute to Whitney's impact. Others questioned the timing, but Costner had removed his Hollywood armor and allowed his grief to be seen. What made his confession even more powerful was the vulnerability he displayed. According to the research, both Costner and Whitney shared similar backgrounds. They were both raised in church. Costner grew up in a Baptist household, while Whitney's upbringing at New Hope Baptist Church shaped the voice that made her a global icon. When they swapped stories during filming, they found common ground in faith and childhood memories. Costner admitted he was conflicted about speaking at the funeral. He wondered if his presence was welcome and whether his words would be misinterpreted. In the end, he spoke to Whitney as though she were still in the room. Instinctive words, born from the same impulse that once led him to reassure her before that nerve-wracking screen test. For Costner, Whitney was never just a co-star. The research shows he often called her the soul of the Bodyguard. In a career filled with accolades, when recalling pivotal moments, he repeatedly returned to Whitney's name. Yet his words carried profound regret that he couldn't save her from addiction, that his letters went unanswered, that someone so luminous couldn't see her own light. His confession wasn't about romance in the traditional sense. It was about a connection that transcended typical Hollywood partnerships. Their on-screen chemistry broke barriers, proving love could prevail over color and background. 3 decades later, the image of Frank Farmer protecting Rachel Marin remains one of cinema's clearest visualizations of devotion. Kevin Costner's confession revealed a truth that can't be ignored. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones never acted upon, carried quietly in spaces between words, letters, and memories. What they shared was built on faith, respect, and understanding that went deeper than cameras could capture. Their bond existed in shared church stories, nervous glances before screen tests, and trust placed when doubting oneself. These private moments, unseen by cameras, became the foundation of Costner's love and regret. The tale isn't about celebrated romance, it's about people who enter our lives and leave indelible marks. Whitney Houston was one of those people for Kevin Costner. His funeral confessions, regrets about what could have been, and lasting admiration ensure their union transcends gossip and exists in quiet memory. What do you think about Kevin Costner's shocking confession? Was it romantic or something more profound? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more incredible Hollywood stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines.